It began as a whisper, the sort of gossip that circulates quicker than a wildfire in a small town. Kody Brown, the erstwhile head of a sprawling polygamous family, was about to test his mettle like never before. Not against rival wives, not against failing marriages, but against the one adversary he could never sweet-talk nor browbeat, the courts. On the outside, the world of the Brown family seemed a well-constructed empire, their every laugh and tear filmed for national television by cameras. Behind the bright lights and scripted smiles, though, were secrets, money deals that had gone awry, promises broken, and betrayals so profound they could destroy not only a family, but an entire legacy. And right in the middle of it all, Kody hanging on for dear life to control something that was already disappearing from his grasp. This is the tale of how Kody Brown lost his family and the millions he believed would hold them together. And believe me, you're going to want to read until the end, because the truth is far darker than the headlines ever indicated. If you've ever questioned how love, money, and power can come crashing together in a deadly collision, this book will leave you speechless. Now let's get started. The courtroom was full, the atmosphere thick with a combination of perfume, sweat, and anxiety. There were no cameras permitted inside, but if there were, the scene would have had the stuff of any Hollywood soap opera. Kody sat at the large wooden table, his jaw set, his golden curls now graying at the edges. Across from him sat his lawyers, riffling through binders that sat so high they could be mistaken for towers on the verge of collapse. On his right, vacant space. The wives who sat beside him in solidarity were absent. Christine had made it clear, she wanted nothing to do with this. Janelle had taken her stand months earlier, calling Kody out for financial secrecy. Meri's silence spoke volumes. And Robyn? Well, Robyn sat in the gallery, clutching a tissue in one hand, her eyes darting nervously between her husband and the judge. The judge walked in, a serious-looking man with weary eyes who had apparently seen it all. But even he appeared fascinated by the commotion this case would bring. He pushed up his glasses, rustled papers, and looked straight at Kody. "Mr. Brown," the judge spoke, his voice resonating through the courtroom hush. "This case is not just about money. It's about trust, broken promises, and the welfare of the people you said you were there to protect." Kody gulped hard. He had endured screaming tantrums, public humiliation, and the scrutiny of millions of TV viewers, but this was different. Here, there was no editing, no producer manipulating the narrative. Here, every word counted. And in that instant, Kody understood this wasn't dollars and cents. This was his very identity, dissolving bit by bit before the public. The prosecution didn't hesitate. Their first witness was Janelle, her blonde hair pulled back in a tight ponytail, her eyes resolute with determination. She rose to the stand, swore an oath, and settled in, her shoulders straight. "Mrs. Brown," the lawyer started, "can you explain to the court why you came forward?" Janelle didn't hesitate. "Because enough is enough," she said. For years Kody had control of everything, the money, the homes, the choices. We trusted him. But when I began to ask questions, I discovered things that didn't make sense. Bank accounts we knew nothing about. Investments we didn't authorize. And when I questioned him, he told me I didn't get the bigger picture. Well, I see it now. He wasn't looking out for us. He was looking out for himself. Kody shifted in his seat, his flush-faced eyes darting around the room. He leaned over and whispered something to his attorney, but the damage was done. The courtroom hummed with whispers. Robyn's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes shiny with tears. This was not testimony. It was betrayal, lev and unadorned, and each word sliced deeper into Kody's meticulously constructed armor. Then came the knockout. The lawyer produced a stack of papers, slapping them down on the evidence table. "These," he declared, "are records of secret transfers totaling almost $2 million. Money transferred from family accounts into private holdings held by Mr. Brown alone." The room gasped. Even the judge leaped back in surprise. Kody's lawyer objected, but the judge waved him off. "Overruled. Proceed." Janelle's voice was shaking now, not because she was afraid, but because she was angry. "Those were for our kids, for their futures. He said we had nothing, that we needed to cut back, live simpler. And all the while, he had money stashed away. Money that wasn't his." Kody slapped his hand on the table, producing an instant order from the judge. His face was beet red, veins prominent on his forehead. For a man who lived on control, this public breakdown was almost too difficult to bear. And yet, as theatrical as this was, everyone in the room understood. It was merely the beginning. Not always are the most explosive answers the ones that are immediately destructive, but the ones that expose the fissures already spreading under the surface. As the session recessed for a short break, Kody erupted out of the courthouse, reporters swarming around him, screaming questions of betrayal and secret millions. He pushed them aside, his jaw clenched in anger, his hand clutched around his briefcase, as if it held the remnants of his kingdom. But within, something had changed. The man who once stood tall, the self-appointed patriarch of a contemporary plural family, was now reduced to someone struggling not only for money, but for relevance, for his position in the narrative he had constructed. And as the gavel summoned the court back to order, the next witness was ready to step forward. And this time, it wouldn't be about dollars. It would be about love, deceit, and a secret that would rock Kody to his very foundations. Because sometimes the truth doesn't cost you dollars. It costs you the very individuals you believed would stand with you forever. The doors swung open, and Kody Brown moved forward, her eyes ablaze with determination. The whole courtroom shifted, as if everyone felt what was about to occur. Kody braced himself, holding on to the edge of the table. If Janelle's words had wounded, Kody's was going to annihilate him. The creak of the doors, and in came Kody Brown. The court was taut already, but it seemed to catch its breath. She was not just another witness, she was the one who had gotten away. The wife who had said enough, when the others were still mired in fear and loyalty. Her presence was charged, a tempest about to unleash. Kody stopped at the witness stand, chin raised high, eyes blazing with the intensity of fire only betrayal can fuel. When she lifted her hand to swear the oath, Kody's knuckles paled against the rim of the defense table. He couldn't help but focus his gaze on her. She was once the one who had smiled at him over packed family gatherings, who had given birth to his 6 children, who had stood up for him when critics labeled him selfish. Now she stood as his opponent, and the audience understood it. What happens when the woman who knows all your secrets finally finds her voice to say them aloud? That's what was about to happen, and it would forever alter everything. Kody positioned herself in the chair, but there was no peace in her stance. She stretched out before Kody, as if challenging him to blink. "Mrs. Brown," the lawyer started, "can you tell us why you decided to testify today?" Her tone was level, but it had an edge of years of pent-up rage. "Because this isn't about money. It's about truth. And I've been quiet for too long." Kody moved, grumbling to himself. Kody's eyes did not leave his face. She started slowly, telling the years of broken promises. Promises of stability, of family togetherness, of common dreams. Her tone then hardened, and every word a knife. "But behind closed doors, it was a different tale. He informed us that we were poor, that we couldn't send the kids to college, that we had to make sacrifices. And all the time, he was pumping money into ventures that had no relation to family." The lawyer leaned in. "What kind of projects?" Kody's mouth twisted into a sour smile. "Land transactions, business ventures with people we never met. And don't forget the luxury vehicles. The fellow who said we needed to pinch pennies was riding a new truck." The courtroom burst into whispers. Kody's attorney and the judge pounded the table. Objection irrelevant. But the judge shot up a hand. "Overruled." "Go on." Kody faced the jury, her eyes wet now, but her voice intact. "I left because I couldn't trust him any longer. And now the world can see why." This was not testimony. It was decades of silence bursting forth all at once, and everybody in that room knew they were watching a reckoning. Underscore 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 underscore. Kody's face was a storm of fury and desperation. He leaned toward his lawyer, whispering harshly, but Kody's words overpowered every sound. "Do you have any idea," she asked, her voice shaking, "what it's like to sit across the dinner table from your husband, to listen to him inform your children? There is nothing for them. No funds for dreams, no funds for safety. Only discover that he's been stashing money in accounts we never even knew we had." There was silence. Robyn hid her face in her hands, her body shaking. Christine's fingers clutched the witness stand's edge. He did not only betray us, he betrayed our children. And I will not be silent about that. The most painful cuts aren't cut by enemies, they're cut by the ones who promised they loved you the most. The lawyer pulled out yet another pile of papers. Mrs. Brown, are these the documents you gave the court? Christine nodded. Yes, these are records I discovered after I left him. Transfers, contracts, deals, all concealed. All withheld from us. The documents were handed to the judge, who read them with furrowed brows. Each turn of the page was one more nail in Kody's coffin. Christine's eyes welled up once more. But this time the feeling was not anger. It was sadness. I used to believe in him. I used to stand up for him in front of everyone, even when I wondered in my mind. But when I saw those figures, I knew the man I married no longer existed. And the man who took his place was more concerned with his reputation than his family. The attorney retreated. No further questions. The judge looked at Kody's attorney. Cross-examination. The attorney stood tall and nodded. Mrs. Brown, he said, his voice dripping with scorn. Isn't it the case that you have some personal animosity toward my client? That maybe your testimony here today is as much about revenge as about truth? Christine's gaze narrowed. If I'd wanted revenge, I might have done this years ago. This is not revenge. This is accountability. The attorney smiled. And yet, you waited until now, after leaving the marriage, after publicly announcing your new life, to suddenly make these claims of wrongdoing? Christine leaned in, her tone low but biting. I waited until now, because he's still lying. And I'm not going to let him anymore. At that moment, Christine was more than a witness. She was the voice of all those who had ever been silenced by someone they loved, and no lawyer's trickery could take that away. The cross-examination faltered, every attempt at discrediting Christine falling short. When she left the stand, the damage was done. The jury had witnessed her flame, her anguish, and her belief. Kody remained stone-faced, but his eyes told a different story. Distracted, restless, full of terror. The judge requested a brief recess. At the command of the falling gavel, the room hummed with murmurs. Columnists wrote frantically. Witnesses leaned into each other, their tones hushed but animated. Kody shoved his chair so hard it screamed on the floor. He stormed out, his lawyer hurrying after him, shouting for him to cool down. But cooling down wasn't possible. His empire, his reputation, his very identity was coming apart at the seams, piece by piece, word by word. And to make it worse, it was just the tip of the iceberg. Because the next witness was going to say something nobody in that courtroom anticipated. Something that would pale even Christine's incriminating testimony in comparison. And when the truth was finally unveiled, it wouldn't only cost Kody his fortune. It would cost him the last bit of family honor he believed he still possessed. The bailiff pushed open the side door. The courtroom fell silent. Into the courtroom walked Meri Brown, her face pale, her lips in a tight line. The woman who was once Kody's first and sole wife was about to take the stand, and the secret she bore would rock the trial itself to its foundation. The courtroom silence was so thick as Meri Brown walked forward. For years, she had been the quiet one, the faithful one, the wife who remained even as her heart was shattering. But now, as she plodded to the witness stand, there was something new about her. Her shoulders were back, her eyes hard, and her mouth pinched into a line. Everybody could sense it. Meri had something up her sleeve, and today she was going to unleash it. The bailiff swore her in. Meri's voice was calm, steady, almost chilling in its composure. She sat down, folded her hands neatly in her lap, and locked eyes with Kody. For the first time in years, she wasn't looking at him with longing or pain. She was looking at him like a stranger. What did the man who stood by you the longest do when he finally realized that she's had enough? That was what we were going to see, and it would leave even Kody speechless. The lawyer stepped in. Mrs. Brown, why did you testify today? Meri's lips quivered for an instant before she spoke. Because I've lived in silence long enough. I believed in this family. I gave up for it. But the man sitting there, she jabbed her finger at Kody, her tone icy, he made our lives a lie. And I won't let him stay behind that lie anymore. The courtroom hushed. Kody shifted restlessly, his attorney whispering in his ear. But Meri didn't flinch. She went back to the beginning, how she had been the first wife, the legal wife, the one who signed the documents, the one who thought they were creating something real. But then her voice turned bitter. I gave up my legal marriage so he could marry Robyn. He said it was for the children, that it was for the protection of the family. But now I know it was for power, for control. And once he got what he wanted, I was disposable. Gasps filled the air. Robyn buried her face in her hands and cried, tears flowing freely. Christine and Janelle sat still in the gallery, their gaze fixed on Meri as if they too were hearing pieces of this story for the first time. The truth doesn't just cut deep, it rewrites everything you thought you knew. And that's precisely what Meri was doing now. The lawyer pushed a folder across the table. Mrs. Brown, can you inform the court what these documents are? Meri's hands trembled as she picked them up. These, she said, her voice breaking, are proof that Kody didn't simply move money around. He used my name to do it. Accounts, loans, investments. I signed papers I didn't even read, because he told me it was for the family. I trusted him. And now I see those papers were never about us. They were about him. Kody's lawyer leapt out of his seat. Objection, speculation. The judge stroked his chin. Overruled. The jury will determine. Meri's eyes began to water, but she did not relent. Do you know what it's like to know that you weren't just disregarded? You were used? To learn that your husband, the man you believed you could trust, was making his fortune on your back, yet he told you that you didn't count. The jury leaned in, listening to his every word. Kody's jaw was clenched so hard you could see the muscles throbbing in his face. At times the quietest voices speak the heaviest truth. And when they do finally break their silence, the world can never again be the same. The attorney leaned forward. Mrs. Brown, why didn't you come forward sooner? Meri exhaled a quivering breath. Because I was scared. Scared of losing him. Scared of losing the family. Scared of being the one who tore it all apart. But the truth is, he tore it apart a long time before I ever said anything. And the only thing for me to lose after that was my silence. The room fell silent. Even the judge moved uncomfortably in his seat, visibly affected. The lawyer for Kody rose for cross-examination. He tried to discredit her, painting her as a bitter ex-wife, a woman lashing out because she was left behind. But Meri's calmness disarmed every attack. Bitter? She said again, her tone crisp and contained. No. Heartbroken? Yes. Betrayed? Absolutely. But bitter? No. Because bitterness would mean I still care what he thinks of me. And I don't. That statement hung like a thunderclap. Kody's face contorted, his rage finally visible. He pounded a fist on the table, earning a stern look from the judge. But Meri didn't waver. For once she had the upper hand. And in that instant everyone in and out of the courtroom knew. This was not merely about fraud. It was about all those years of deception finally coming back to haunt him. By the time Meri left the stand, the room's energy had been completely flipped. Janelle and Christine shared a look, nodding in silence at the courage it took. Robyn cried softly, mascara streaming down her face, but uttered not a word. The judge called for a short recess. The jury members avoided Kody's gaze. Even his own lawyer looked shaken. Kody sat back, his chest heaving, his hands trembling as he tried to compose himself. But the cracks were showing. The man who had once projected absolute confidence was unraveling in plain sight. And if Meri's testimony was devastating, what came next would be catastrophic. Since the next witness was not a wife, but someone who had observed Kody's business from the outside, someone who had nothing to lose, and everything to gain. As the bailiff swung open the side door, a silence descended on the courtroom. In strode a one-time business partner of Kody's, a man with papers folded under his arm and a scowl on his face. If the wives had testified from the heart, this man was going to testify from hard, cold facts, and the revelations he brought hung over Kody like a death sentence. The fluorescent lights in the courtroom felt cruel, making the shadows on Kody's face look sharp and bitter as the next witness entered. He was not a wife. He was not family. He was something far worse. A man who had trusted Kody once with money, with contracts, with vows. And now he stood there to destroy the very building blocks of the empire Kody believed he owned. The crowd changed, feeling the tension in the room. This wasn't about feeling now. This was about fact, figures, and proof that couldn't be massaged away. The man set a fat folder on the witness stand, his jaw clenched, his eyes glacial. Kody didn't even glance at him. He couldn't. Because within this man's control was the one thing that Kody had: no protection from the truth. When betrayal collides with hard evidence, you can't escape. And what this witness was going to say would cut deeper than any wife's words could. "State your name for the record," the attorney instructed. "My name is Daniel Peterson," the man said, his voice low and steady. "I worked with Mr. Brown for almost 5 years, and I saw everything." The room tensed. Kody's attorney fidgeted, already getting a sense of the harm that was going to be done. Daniel opened the folder. There were contracts, emails, bank statements, evidence of transactions that were far more than domestic disputes. He unfolded the first page and held it up. "This," he said, "is a contract that Mr. Brown signed, guaranteeing investors that their funds would be used to invest in developing family property. Instead, funds were diverted millions of dollars into personal accounts and side businesses. Businesses that didn't work. Businesses that never happened." The gasps were instantaneous. Janelle's eyes went wide. Christine muttered something under her breath. Even Meri, who already knew she had betrayed, was shocked. The lawyer leaned forward. "Mr. Peterson, are you stating that Kody Brown deliberately misled his investors?" Daniel's eyes narrowed. "That's what I'm stating." Kody pounded the table. "That's a falsehood," he shouted, his voice ringing out in the chamber. But the gavel of the judge shut him up. "One more interruption, Mr. Brown, and I'll have you held in contempt." Kody slumped back into his seat, his face flushed, and in that moment they all saw it. The mask was cracking, and the man who had constructed his life on control was losing it. Daniel went on, laying out the evidence piece by piece. He spoke of meetings where Kody had outlined grand schemes of developments that would never come to pass. He related accounts that were opened under shell names, only to send the money back into Kody's personal holdings. "These weren't errors," Daniel stated assertively. "These were intentional decisions. And I know because I was the one requested to relocate the money." The courtroom hummed. The jury wrote furiously, their faces strained with focus. Kody's attorney attempted to interrupt. "Mr. Peterson, aren't you here because you severed your partnership with Mr. Brown on bad terms? Because of a personal vendetta?" Daniel didn't bat an eye. "I walked out because I couldn't take it anymore. I told him to quit. I told him that one day it would come back and get him. And he laughed in my face." A shudder of shock ran through the crowd. Christine shook her head, mumbling, "That sounds exactly like him." Sometimes the greatest downfall isn't caused by enemies, but by the arrogance of thinking you'll never get caught. The attorney laid out a spreadsheet projected on a screen. Rows of numbers, transfers, and names filled the display. The jurors leaned forward, their pens scratching furiously. "Here are the expenditures Mr. Peterson testified to. Money designated for family supports and property development, spent instead on Mr. Brown's own personal expenses, vacations, cars, even luxury private rentals." Robyn gasped aloud, her face white. She stared at Kody in horror, her trembling lips as if she was trying to say something but couldn't. Kody's attorney objected once more, but the judge permitted the evidence. The evidence was too solid, too incriminating. Daniel's voice softened now, but no less intense. "I saw him persuade those who believed in him to invest. I saw him reassure his wives, his children, his followers, that it was all for them. But it never was for them. It was always for him." The room was silent as death, and in that silence, you could almost hear the sound of Kody's empire crumbling before your very eyes. The cross-examination was merciless, but Daniel didn't crack. Every effort to frame him as bitter fell flat. He had receipts literally. And when the lawyer got too aggressive, Daniel leaned forward and spoke the line that stilled the room. "This isn't about bitterness. This is about justice. And for once in his life, Kody Brown can't run from it." The words hung there like a final judgment. Kody sat immobilized, his fingers clamped around the table so hard that his knuckles whitened. Robyn leaned over and whispered something desperately, but he didn't move. He was looking at the spreadsheet, his mouth open as if watching the breakdown of everything he had constructed. The judge excused Daniel, but not before threatening Kody's lawyer that the proof would hold. The jurors did not meet Kody's eyes, their faces serious. As the witness left the stand, the gallery buzzed again. Whispers filled the air. Some looked at Kody with disgust, others with pity. But one thing was clear, his reputation was gone. And yet there was more to come.
because if the wives had revealed betrayal, and the associate had revealed fraud, the next witness would reveal something even darker, something personal, something that would rip through whatever was left of Kody's tattered image as a husband and father. Because sometimes the most devastating wounds aren't financial at all, they're the ones that slice right through the heart. The bailiff called the next witness. The courtroom grew silent. The doors swung open, and out walked one of Kody's own offspring, their faces etched with anguish and resolve. If the jury was unsure up until now, they were soon going to be made absolutely certain, because nothing could get them ready for what his own kin was about to tell. The doors of the courtroom creaked wide, and for a single beat, everyone stopped breathing. It wasn't a lawyer. It wasn't another business acquaintance. It was someone much worse. Someone whose words could dismember not only Kody's defense, but his entire identity as a father. A teenage girl stepped forward, her eyes brimming with equal measures of fear and resolve. The whispers began in an instant. The jury leaned forward, because when your own kid has to testify against you, there's no getting away with it. And here is the reality. Sometimes the greatest knives aren't wielded by enemies. Sometimes they're wielded by the ones you're supposed to care about. The child was sworn in by the bailiff, their little hands shaking as they swore to tell the truth. The judge nodded sympathetically, seeing the seriousness of what was to come. The lawyer moved forward. State your name for the record. The child paused, looking at their mother in the gallery. Christine gave a reassuring nod, and tears pricked at the edges of her eyes. My name is. The voice wavered but cleared again. Truly Brown. The gallery gasped. Christine and Kody Brown's youngest daughter was now the voice of those children who had endured the chaos, the deceit, and the broken promises. The attorney's voice softened. Truly, can you tell us, in your own words, what life was like with your father? Her gaze moved to Kody. He couldn't even meet her eyes. He looked down at the table, jaw clenched, hands clenched like a man bracing for impact. First, Truly started, her voice shaking. I believed my dad loved us. I believed we were all special. But then, everything changed. He began not to appear. He began not to call. He began not to care. And when we questioned why, he told us he was too busy. Too busy with Robyn. Too busy with money. Too busy for us. The jury stood still, listening to every word. Christine covered her face with her hands. Kody shifted restlessly, at last looking up. But Truly's gaze was held fast. Do you know what it is like? She stated emphatically. To see your dad decide everything except you. To realize you don't count. The quiet that ensued was louder than any explosion. For in that instant, the trial was not concerning contracts or dollars. It was concerning the shattered heart of a child. And no jury ever forgets that. The lawyer leaned in, pressing softly. Truly, can you describe a moment when you felt your father abandoned you? Her voice caught. Last year I was ill. I needed him. I wanted him to stay. Mom called and he didn't show up. He said he had to stay with Robyn and her children. I was lying in bed, thinking maybe if I were one of Robyn's children, he would love me. Gasps filled the courtroom. Christine cried silently. Janelle patted her arm, and even Meri, who was sitting rigidly, was crying tears down her face. Kody leaped up. That is not true, he yelled. But the judge struck the gavel. Sit down, Mr. Brown. Truly's eyes slitted, her voice taking on more strength. It is true. You weren't there. You never are. The jury's pens flew back and forth. And there, right there, you could sense it. The courtroom changing. No longer a fight over money. Now it was love, loyalty, and betrayal.
The attorney went on cautiously. Truly, did your father ever discuss money with you? She shook her head slowly. Occasionally, he'd tell us we needed to give up, because he had to build the future of the family. But then he'd come home in a new car. Or he'd take Robyn and her children on vacations, and we'd get nothing. He'd tell us, this is for everybody. But it never was. It was just for him. The room hummed, the jury fidgeting uncomfortably. Truly's quivering, small voice meant more than any ledger of money could. Some truths aren't on bank statements. It's in the tears of the children that were left behind. Halfway through, the attorney let her pause to catch her breath. Her voice steadied. She was no longer a child. She was a witness bearing the hurt of every sibling who had ever felt abandoned. My siblings and I always talk about it, she said. The way he would be there, and now he's not. The way he cares only for one house, one family, and how the rest of us don't count anymore. We all thought this show was going to be about family, but all along, it was just about him. There was a chilling silence in the courtroom. Jurors glared at each other. Robyn covered her mouth, tears falling down her cheeks, but no one in the room seemed to sympathize. To them, she was part of the reason this young girl was on the stand, crying about abandonment. Kody's face twisted in rage, but deep down he knew the damage was irreversible. The cross-examination was savage. Kody's attorney attempted to discredit, attempted to assert that Truly was too young to comprehend. But the kid held firm. I may be young, Truly snapped, but I know when my dad doesn't love me the way he should. The courtroom dissolved into whispers. The jury relaxed back, their faces stern. The lawyer blinked, defeated, and shut down the questioning. Truly walked off the stand, past her dad without looking at him. Christine enveloped her in her arms, crying into her hair. And Kody? He sat stock still, his eyes white as if the walls were at last closing in on him. But the trial wasn't finished, because although the wives had testified to betrayal, the associate had testified to fraud, and Truly had testified to abandonment, there was yet another witness to testify. A former insider for TLC, a person who knew where the real money originated, a person who had witnessed what occurred behind the scenes when no one was there to see, and when they opened their mouth, it wouldn't only dismantle Kody's defense, it would take down the whole show. The room dropped into a silence as the next witness walked in. This wasn't a wife. This wasn't a kid. This wasn't even a business associate. No, this was someone the jury had not seen coming. Someone who had worked alongside the Brown family for years. Someone who knew the contracts, the shooting schedules, the paychecks, and the secrets. And as they lifted their right hand and took the oath to speak the truth, Kody's whole body tensed. For if there was anything he was more afraid of happening to him than his wives against him, it was the network itself. When the cameras switch off and the microphones stop, the truth will always see the light of day. The lawyer's tone was steady but keen. Please declare your occupation and name on the record. My name is Daniel Reeves, said the man in a firm tone. I worked as a production coordinator for TLC, and this was for Sister Wives. The jury sat up. Whispers wove through the courtroom. Even the judge inclined slightly, aware of the significance of such a witness. The lawyer went on. Mr. Reeves, how many years did you work with the Browns? More than a decade. Reeves replied. I was there nearly from day one. I witnessed everything on tape and off. The words lingered in the air. Kody's attorney protested at once. Your Honor, this is not germane. This witness is not here to defame my client, but testify. The judge overruled. The witness may proceed. The jury will decide credibility. And just like that, the door to Kody's secret life swung open wide. Reeves started slow, cautiously. When the show began, it was about family. That's how we sold it. America would get to know a unique home, their ups, their downs. But as time went on, it evolved. Kody evolved. It became less about family and more about money. Gasps emanated from the courtroom. The wives nodded slightly, understanding the hurtful reality. What do you mean? The attorney questioned. Reeves pushed forward. I mean, Kody demanded increasingly. Special bonuses. Larger homes. He wanted the contracts redone so the checks didn't go to the wives separately, but to him. He said it was to simplify finances, but everyone knew the truth. He wanted control. Kody knotted his fists under the table. Sometimes the most atrocious betrayal is not from enemies or strangers. It comes from individuals who vowed to create something with you. The lawyer pushed. And did TLC comply? Reeves shook her head. Yes, they allowed him to do it. They allowed him to launder the money. They allowed him to play favorites. Because as long as the show was getting ratings, they didn't care. But we lived with the cost. Wives sobbing between scenes. Children wondering if their dad would attend their school play. And Kody? He was too busy haggling over his next paycheck. The jury scribbled furiously. The gallery stirred. Christine's jaw trembled. Janelle closed her eyes. Meri looked down. And Robyn clutched her chest as though stabbed by the words. Kody finally snapped. This is ridiculous. He's lying. The judge slammed the gavel. Mr. Brown, one more outburst and you'll be held in contempt. Kody sat down, seething. But Reeves wasn't finished. He detailed how production would set up happy family dinners on the set. But the moment cameras stopped rolling, the wives would run off. weeping in various rooms. He recounted how Kody would demand one-on-one sit-downs with producers to negotiate greater perks for Robyn and her children while having the other ones wait. And then Reeves delivered the bombshell. There was a fund, he explained. A fund TLC established to care for all the wives equally in the event of divorce, emergencies, or legal matters. It was intended as a backup plan. But Kody insisted on controlling it himself. And somehow within 2 years it disappeared. The jury gasped. The gallery exploded. Even the judge seemed flabbergasted. The lawyer posed the question on all of their minds. Gone? How much is it? Reeves' tone was flat, deadly serious. More than $2 million. Bitter? She echoed. Her tone hard but restrained. No. Heartbroken? Yes. Betrayed? Without question. But bitter? No. Because to be bitter would mean I still care what he thinks of me. And I don't. That statement hit with the force of a thunderclap. Kody's face contorted, his anger finally evident. He pounded his fist on the table, drawing a warning look from the judge. But Meri didn't blink. For once she had the advantage. And in that instant, the audience in and out of the courtroom understood. This wasn't merely about fraud. It was about years of deception finally coming back to haunt him. By the time Meri left the stand, the tension in the room had changed entirely. Janelle and Christine shared a glance, silently recognizing the courage it had taken. Robyn wept softly, her mascara running down her face, but remained frozen in place. The judge called for a short recess. The jury members avoided Kody's gaze. Even his own lawyer looked shaken. Kody sat back, his chest heaving, his hands trembling as he tried to compose himself. But the cracks were showing. The man who had once projected absolute confidence was unraveling in plain sight. And if Meri's testimony was devastating, what came next would be catastrophic. Because the next witness was not a wife, but one who had observed Kody's business from the outside, someone who had everything to gain, and nothing to lose. As the bailiff swung open the side door, a silence descended upon the courtroom. In strode an old business acquaintance of Kody's, a man with papers folded under his arm and a stern look on his face. If the wives had testified from the heart, this man was going to testify from hard facts, and the reality he bore would be the death knell for Kody once and for all. The fluorescent lights in the courtroom appeared brighter than normal, casting unflattering shadows on Kody's face as the next witness entered. He wasn't a wife, he wasn't a relative, he was something far more sinister. A man who had once entrusted Kody with funds, with contracts, with commitments, and now he was here to dismantle the very underpinnings of the empire. Kody believed he ruled. The crowd shifted, feeling the tension building. This was no longer about feelings. This was about facts, figures, and evidence that couldn't be massaged away. The man set a heavy folder down on the witness stand, his jaw clenched, his eyes frosty. Kody didn't glance at him. He couldn't. Because in this man's hands lay the one thing Kody had no immunity against: the truth. When betrayal is paired with hard evidence, there's no way out. And what this witness was going to say would slice deeper than any wife's testimony possibly could. State your name for the record, the lawyer instructed. My name is Daniel Peterson, the man answered, his tone low but firm. I worked for Mr. Brown for almost 5 years, and I saw everything. The room froze. Kody's attorney shifted restlessly, already feeling the harm to come. Daniel flung open the folder. There were contracts, emails, bank statements, evidence of transactions that extended far beyond brother-sister disputes. He pulled out the first page and held it aloft. This, he declared, is a contract signed by Mr. Brown, guaranteeing investors that their money would be spent building up family property. But instead of that, those millions of dollars were diverted into personal accounts and side business. Business that failed. Business that never happened. The gasps were instant. Janelle's eyes grew wide. Christine whispered something under her breath. Even Meri, already having confessed her own deceit, seemed shocked. The lawyer leaned forward. You're Mr. Peterson? Are you accusing Kody Brown of intentionally deceiving his investors? Daniel's eyes became cold. That's what I'm telling you. Kody pounded on the table. That's a lie, he shouted, his voice ringing in the room. But the gavel of the judge cut him off. One more interruption, Mr. Brown, and I'll find you in contempt. Kody slumped back into his chair, his face red, and in that moment, everyone could see it. The mask was breaking, and the man who had founded his existence on control was losing control. Daniel went on, laying out the proof bit by bit. He spoke of meetings where Kody had presented elaborate schemes for developments that would never materialize. He laid out accounts that were opened using shell names, only to forward money back into Kody's personal investment. These weren't errors, Daniel stated assertively. These were intentional decisions, and I know because I was the one to whom the money was asked to be transferred. The courtroom hummed. The jury wrote furiously, their brows furrowed in concentration. Kody's attorney attempted to interrupt. Mr. Peterson, isn't it true you parted from your business with Mr. Brown on bad terms? That you're here due to a personal vendetta? Daniel didn't blink. I quit because I couldn't be a part of it any longer. I told him to stop. I warned him one day it would catch up with him. And he laughed in my face. A shudder of astonishment spread among the crowd. Christine shook her head, barely above a whisper. That sounds just like him. Sometimes the greatest downfall isn't caused by enemies, but by the arrogance of thinking you'll never get caught. The attorney laid out a spreadsheet projected on a screen. Rows of numbers, transfers, and names filled the display. The jurors leaned forward, their pens scratching furiously. These are the funds Mr. Peterson testified about. Money allocated for family support and property development, redirected instead to Mr. Brown's personal expenditures, vacations, cars, even private luxury rentals. Robyn audibly gasped, her complexion ashen. She glared at Kody with disgust, her lips quivering as if she wished to say something but couldn't. Kody's attorney objected once more, but the judge permitted the evidence. The facts were too substantial, too incriminating. Daniel's voice became softer now, but no less intense. I saw him talk people who believed in him into putting their money into it. I saw him reassure his wives, his children, his followers, that it was all for them. But it was never for them. It was for him. The room was completely silent, and in that silence, you could almost hear the sound of Kody's empire crumbling around him in real time. The cross-examination was vicious, but Daniel didn't crack. Every effort to cast him as bitter dissolved. He had the receipts, on paper, and when the lawyer pushed too aggressively, Daniel leaned in and dropped the line that stunned the room. This isn't about bitterness. This is about justice. And for once in his life, Kody Brown can't run from it. The words dangled in the air like a last judgment. Kody was frozen, his fingers wrapped around the table so hard his knuckles went white. Robyn leaned in close, whispering something urgently, but he didn't answer. He was gazing at the spreadsheet, his eyes wide, as if watching the fall of all that he had created. The judge sent Daniel away, but before that, he warned Kody's lawyer that the evidence was irrefutable. The jurors looked away from Kody's face, their faces somber. As the witness departed from the stand, the gallery hummed once more. Whispers abounded. Some gazed at Kody with disgust, while others felt pity for him. And one thing was certain, his reputation was lost. And yet there was still more to go. For if the wives had revealed betrayal, and the associate had revealed fraud, the next witness would reveal something even uglier. Something intimate. Something which would rip through what little was left of Kody's damaged reputation as a husband and father. Because sometimes the greatest hurts are not monetary at all. They're the ones that cut clear through to the heart. The bailiff called the next witness. The courtroom grew quiet. The doors creaked open, and one of Kody's own kids stepped inside, their eyes brimming with tears and defiance. If the jury was skeptical before, it was going to be erased, because nothing could have them ready for what his own flesh and blood was about to tell them. The doors of the courtroom creaked open, and for a second, all eyes were fixed on them. It wasn't a lawyer. It wasn't another business associate. It was something far worse, something whose testimony could demolish not only Kody's defense but his very self as a father. A teenager stepped out, their eyes brimming with equal parts of fear and resolve. The whispers began at once. The jury leaned forward, because when your own kid has to come in and testify against you, there is no leaving unbroken. And this is the reality. Sometimes enemies are not the sharpest knives. Sometimes the sharpest knives are the ones from the folks you were tasked with shielding. The bailiff had sworn the child in, their tiny hands shaking as they vowed to tell the truth. The judge nodded sympathetically, understanding the seriousness of what was to come. The lawyer moved closer. Please say your name for the record. The child looked uncertain, glancing at their mother, who was sitting in the gallery. Christine gave a gentle nod, tears welling up in her eyes. My name is, the voice broke, but settled again, truly Brown.
The gallery gasped. Christine and Kody Brown's youngest daughter was now the voice of the children who had experienced the chaos, the lies and the broken promises. The lawyer's tone softened. Truly, can you tell us, in your own words, what life was like with your father? Her gaze went to Kody. He couldn't even glance at her. He looked down at the table, jaw clenched, hands interlocked like a man bracing for a blow. First, Truly started, her voice shaking. I believed that my dad cared about us. I believed we were all special. But then, things shifted. He didn't come anymore. He didn't call. He didn't care. And when we asked why, he told us he was too busy. Too busy with Robyn. Too busy with money. Too busy for us. The jury stopped breathing, listening intently. Christine hid her face in her hands. Kody moved restlessly, at last looking up, but Truly's gaze held his. Do you understand what it's like? She asserted. To see your dad select everything else before you. To see that you don't count. The resulting silence was deafening. For in that instant, the trial was not about contracts or finances. It was about the shattered heart of a child. And no jury ever forgets that. The lawyer probed gently. Truly, can you describe a situation where you felt abandoned by your father? Her voice cracked. Last year when I was ill, I needed him. I wanted him to be present. Mom phoned, but he did not show up. He said he could not leave Robyn and her children. I recall lying in bed, thinking, maybe if I were one of Robyn's children, he would care. Gasps rang through the courtroom. Christine quietly wept. Janelle stroked her arm. And even Meri, rigidly seated, cried tears down her face. Kody leaped up. That's not true, he snarled. But the judge rapped the gavel. Sit down, Mr. Brown. Truly's eyes flashed, her voice growing firmer. It is true. You weren't there. You never are. Pens scratched furiously on the jury, and there in that moment, you could sense it. The courtroom changing. No longer a fight over money. Now, it was love, devotion, and betrayal. The lawyer went on cautious. Truly, did your father ever discuss money with you? She shook her head slowly. Sometimes, he'd tell us we had to make sacrifices, because he wanted to build the family future. But then he'd come home in a new vehicle. Or he'd take Robyn and her children on vacation, and we'd get nothing. He'd say, this is for everyone. But it never was. It was always for him. The room hummed, the jury moving uncomfortably. Truly's tiny shaking voice meant more than any sheet of financial paperwork could. Sometimes the truth is not in bank books. It's in the tears of the abandoned children. Halfway through, the attorney reached a pause, allowing Truly to catch her breath. Her voice became stronger. She was no longer a child, but a witness bearing the anguish of each sibling who had felt forgotten. My siblings bring it up all the time, she went on. How he was always there. And now he is not. How he only cares about one house, one family. And how the rest of us don't even count anymore. We thought this show was going to be about family, but really it was about him. The courtroom was solemnly silent. Jurors looked at each other. Robyn put her hand over her mouth, crying streams running down her cheeks, but no one in the room showed any sympathy. To them, she was also one of the reasons this young girl was on the witness stand, sobbing about abandon. Kody's face curled up in anger, but deep inside, he knew damage was irreparable. Cross-examination was brutal. Kody's attorney attempted to discredit, attempted to say Truly was too young to know. But the child did not vacillate. I may be young, Truly retorted with an edge, but I know when my dad doesn't love me the way he should. The courtroom fell into murmurs. The jury slumped back in their chairs, their faces somber. The lawyer shook his head, defeated, and closed question. Truly left the stand, striding by her father without even a glance. Christine held her close, crying in her hair. And Kody, he just sat there white-faced, as if at last the walls were closing in. But the trial wasn't over, because although the wives had testified to betrayal, the associate had testified to fraud, and Truly had testified to abandon, there was one more witness left to testify. A former TLC insider, a person who knew the money's true source, a person who had witnessed the events that took place behind the cameras when everyone else was oblivious. And when they would talk, it wouldn't simply discredit Kody's defense. It could topple the show as a whole. The room went silent when the next witness stepped in. This wasn't a wife. This wasn't a kid. This wasn't even a business associate. No. This was someone the jury did not see coming. Someone who had worked alongside the Brown family for years. Someone who knew the contracts, the shooting schedules, the paychecks and the secrets. And as they all raised their right hand and took an oath to speak the truth, Kody's whole body tensed. For if there was anything he dreaded more than his wives against, it was the network itself. Once the cameras are turned off and microphones cease to record, the truth comes to the fore. The voice of the lawyer was composed, but pointed. Please give your name and profession for the record. I am Daniel Reeves, the man replied assertively. I was a production coordinator for TLC, working in particular on Sister Wives. The jury sat up straight. Whispers ran through the courtroom. Even the judge sat a bit forward, sensing the import of such a witness. The lawyer pressed on. Mr. Reeves, how long did you work with the Browns? More than 10 years, Reeves replied. I was there near the start. I experienced everything on and off camera. The words were heavy with meaning. Kody's attorney protested at once. Your Honor, that's irrelevant. This witness is here to defame my client, not testify. The judge overruled. The witness can continue. The jury will decide credibility. And with that, Kody's private world was flung wide open. Reeves started out gradually, tentatively. When the show first began, it was about family. That's how we sold it. America would get to view an unusual household, their struggles, their happiness. But through the years it evolved. Kody evolved. It wasn't about family anymore, and became about money. Gasp filled the gallery. The wives nodded slightly, acknowledging the harsh reality. What do you mean? The lawyer asked. Reeves rested her elbows on the table. I mean, Kody wanted more and more. Special perks, larger homes. He wanted the contracts revised so that the checks weren't written to the wives separate, but to him. He claimed it was to streamline finance, but everyone knew the real reason. He wanted control. Kody's fists were clenched under the table. Sometimes the most awful betrayals don't happen at the hands of enemies or strangers. They happen at the hands of people who promise to build something. The lawyer insisted. And did TLC comply? Reeves nodded hard. Yes, they allowed it. They allowed him to channel the money. They allowed him to play favor. Because so long as the show was bringing in ratings, they didn't care. But we saw what it cost. Wives sobbing between takes. Children wondering if their dad would attend their school play. And Kody, he was too busy brokering his next paycheck. The jury scribbled furious. The gallery stirred. Christine's jaw trembled. Janelle closed her eyes. Meri looked down, and Robyn clutched her chest, as though stabbed by the words. Kody finally snapped. This is ridiculous. He's lying. The judge slammed the gavel. Mr. Brown, one more outburst, and you'll be held in contempt. Kody sat down, seething. But Reeves wasn't finished. He explained how production would arrange to have happy family dinners staged. But as soon as cameras stopped rolling, the wives would flee, crying in individual rooms. He talked about how Kody would demand secluded meetings with producers in order to get more benefits for Robyn and her children, while demanding that the others could wait. And then Reeves revealed the bombshell. There was a fund, he explained. A fund TLC established to help all the wives equally in times of divorce, in emergencies, or in legal situations. It was supposed to be a backup plan, but Kody insisted on total control of it, and somehow within 2 years, it vanished. The jury gasped. The gallery burst out. Even the judge looked shocked. The lawyer posed the question on everyone's lips. Gone? How much are we talking about? Reeves' tone was flat, deadly earnest. More than $2 million.